Hi. I was reading from a section of Jerry Bergman's book, Jehovah's Witnesses and the Problem of Mental Illness, a section that he entitled The Role of Women. In that section, there is a witness who was obviously interviewed, and it gives her perception of the women in the organization. I must say that it's not my perception, either by teaching, reading, or experience as a witness. But I will read what she says for you to see how you take it. She says, I asked myself why it was that my brother was not hounded by the obsessive guilt and the desperate desire for approval that informed all my actions. Partly, I suppose, luck and an accident of temperament, but also because of the particularly guilt-inspiring double message girls received. Girls were taught that it was their nature to be spiritual, but paradoxically that they were more prone to absolute depravity than were boys. Again, I don't recall ever hearing anyone say that or read it in the literature. She continues, in my religion, the witnesses, everything beautiful and noble and spiritual and good was represented by a woman, and everything evil and depraved and monstrous was also represented by a woman. I learned that God's organization, the Bride of Christ, or his 144,000 heavenly co-rulers, were represented by a chaste virgin. I also learned that Babylon the Great, or false religion, was the mother of the abominations, or the disgusting things of the earth, who likes to get drunk on human blood, and is pictured as a woman, an international harlot. Young girls were taught not were taught were no I have to start that one again. Young girls were thought not to have the urges boys had. They were not only caretakers of their own sleepy sexuality, but protectors of boys' vital male impulses as well. They were thus doubly responsible, and if they fell, doubly damned. Girls were taught that simply by existing, they were provoking male sexuality, which it was their job to then subdue. Again, I don't ever recall being told this or reading it. To be female, she continues, I learned was to be temptations, inasmuch as males naturally wanted it more than a female wanted it. She was doubly depraved, unnatural, as well as sinful. She was the receptacle for male lust. According to the Apostle Peter, she was the weaker vessel, literally a pot to be filled. If the vessel, created by a male god for the use of other males, presumed to have no desire of its own, was perverse, it was consigned to the consuming fires of God's wrath. If then a woman were to fall from grace, her fall would be mighty indeed, and her willful nature would lead her into that awful abyss where she would be deprived of redemptive love of God and the validating love of man. Whereas, were a man to fall, he would be merely stumbling over his own feet of clay. So again, it's certainly not my perception from my witness days. I thought we should read the text in 1 Peter 3, 1 to 11, because she refers to the weaker vessel, and this is where that is in the Bible. So 1 Peter 3, we'll read 1 to 11. Wives, likewise, be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, they, without a word, may be won by the conduct of their wives. When they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear, do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel. Rather, let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. For in this manner, in former times, the holy women who trusted in God also adorned themselves, being submissive to their own husbands. As Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are if you do good and are not afraid with any terror. Husbands, likewise, dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers might not be hindered. Finally, all of you be of one mind, having compassion for one another. Love as brothers, be tender-hearted, be courteous, not returning evil for evil, or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this, that you may inherit a blessing. For he who would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. So my question would be, do we allow our own personal feelings to determine whether Bible counsel should be accepted? In that text, was Peter demeaning women? Was he advising abuse of women? Was he encouraging husbands to degrade or disregard their wives? Use them? What in the text bothers us, and why? What characteristics does Peter encourage in women? He uses these terms: submissive, chaste, gentle and quiet spirit. What characteristics does our current society encourage in women? Assertiveness, moral freedom of choice, ambition, aggressiveness, individuality. Much of this has created a competition in the sexes, even within families. What is Peter's counsel to husbands in how they should treat their wives? He said, be understanding, give honor to them. What in this advice is detrimental to family and church life? Does this counsel really need updating? What is Peter's counsel to the church family? He says to have compassion, to love, to be tender, courteous, a blessing, not to return evil for evil or reviling for reviling, to be peaceful and peace pursuing. What part of this counsel needs revising? Which counsel is easier to follow, the current societies or Scripture? Maybe that is why some resist Scripture. I'm going to link to a video based on a reading from C.S. Lewis's book, The Four Loves. Its title started with, "What Does Family Headship Imply?"